was forgotten, and you reached out to me.
As Jesus says, whatever you do for the least of these, you do unto me. Support a child in his name through Compassion International at compassion.com/unto me.
You will be like God.
Human unity with God was severed, and through it all, God's promise remained true.
Follow me, Abram, and I will make you great.
This is the chosen people. Listen to the chosen people at thechosenpeople.com. That's thechosenpeople.com.
Welcome to another episode of Fringe
Beyond
Limits.
God, that feels so good.
So good.
So good.
So good.
so airy.
So good. So, how are you guys doing?
Fantastical.
Pretty good. How about you?
Yeah, I'm fine. You know, same shit, bigger pile.
Bigger pile?
Always a bigger pile.
Always a bigger pile.
I mean, no one can.
Well, you just keep adding to it, so.
Yeah, no one can shovel that fast.
You.
So, yeah. What's new and exciting with you guys?
Going to Mexico.
For the holidays?
No. For a 40th birthday celebration with all my girlfriends. We all turned 40 this year.
Wow.
Yeah. So just decided to do a trip at the end of the year.
That's great.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Yeah.
40, huh?
40.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
I still got about 5 years.
This is why nobody
Nobody
talks
asked
here.
you.
Yeah.
If you think about it, we're about like 5 to 6 years apart each.
What year were you born?
84.
Yeah, we're 6 years apart.
Mhm.
And
90.
90.
Yeah. 6.
Yeah, so we're all 6 years apart.
Six.
Isn't that
six,
crazy?
Six.
666.
We are the devil.
Oh, shit.
We have just brought upon the first horse of the apocalypse.
Is that why whenever we mention God, the lights dim?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was waiting for it.
Me too.
I think
Unless
that
it's
was a little
just
too
when
on
you
the
do it,
nose.
Lynette.
Yeah.
Wow.
It could be just a little nut thing too.
Well, maybe. Yeah. How are you guys? What have you been up to?
You know, just chilling.
Like a villain?
Like a villain.
Mm.
Yeah, just trying to figure out what it feels like to be 46.
Any epiphanies?
Yeah.
They're still figuring it out.
Yeah, nobody fucking cares about me. That's really about it.
I'll say what's changed.
Yeah, nothing. Nothing's changed.
Oh, you're being a whiner door.
Nobody loves me.
Everybody hates you. Guess you'll go eat worms.
Okay. What about you, Brie?
Nothing. I'm just boring old life every freaking day.
Yeah.
And Brian continually saying naked and buttholes.
Mm-hmm.
That's an adventure.
I hate him.
You love him,
I love to hate him.
but you love him.
You guys have Christmas plans coming up yet? Or haven't figured out yet?
Well, yeah, no.
Ours is going to be in January. I think.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's like the first weekend or second weekend in January.
It might be the first weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, because her brother lives up in Fond du Lac.
Wisconsin.
So we always celebrate that, her side, someone else. And then Christmas Eve will be at my aunt's, and her son and his fiance are coming in from Arizona this year. So I look forward to harassing them.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Don't you
And
do that
then-
at any social gathering
Yeah,
if
pretty
anybody
much.
is around?
Yeah, pretty much. And then my sister, who I don't talk to, she's, I guess, been dating someone for like a year that I've never met.
Okay.
And I'm assuming he may be there and I might meet him.
Oh, boy.
My brother, who doesn't talk to me anymore, he may be there. He wasn't there last year out of his own choice.
I mean, the common denominator here
Is me.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. That's fine. You can think I'm the problem.
I mean, we know you're the problem. We just give you a platform to speak about it.
This is true. Very true.
Do you guys do traditional seafood?
Yeah, 7 fishes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Missy's favorite.
That's the best part of.
oh, it's so good.
Forget the presents, forget the tree.
Yeah,
it's the
I don't
seafood
care.
dishes. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we don't even do. I mean, we do a white elephant gift nowadays.
Okay, yeah.
So
Is
yeah,
it a buy something weird or find something around your house kind of weird?
either one.
Okay.
Yeah, either one. And it doesn't even have to be like weird. It just something, right?
Yeah.
What are the 7 fishes?
Just 7 different kind of fish.
I know, but
They're not specific. It's not fish specific.
okay.
Yeah, it just
They're just like different styles.
not styles, but different fish. Like there's crab, there's swordfish, there's shrimp. So I mean, it doesn't
Salmon, clams, yeah.
yeah.
Just
So it
a
Oh, I
mixture of
didn't.
fishes.
I actually never knew that like shellfish would be a part. Like I thought like fishies with the fins.
yeah, they're called shellfish. The word fish is in its name.
I'm gonna kill you one day. You know that? Allegedly.
Please,
Allegedly.
please do.
Allegedly.
Like that's a welcoming for me. End of my life. I would love it.
Our family does the baked clams. That's like
Mhm.
the staple.
Yeah, those are good.
Yeah. But it's
Yeah.
been harder and harder to find
Yeah.
good
Good clams.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they're getting smaller and
Mm-hmm. And
sometimes
more
you can't even.
expensive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so my aunt, well, it's gotten so expensive where my aunt, she does it all. I think she orders it now. I think we ordered from an Italian restaurant now,
mhm.
and we all chip in.
Yeah.
So, which is totally fine. Like, to have, a $500-$600 bill,
Yeah.
on one person
Yeah.
is kind of rough. So, especially on Christmas.
No kidding.
So, yeah. So I always look forward to it. There was one year where I hosted. My aunt and her husband, my uncle, went to Arizona, and my brother and sister came here, and I smoked a lot of the fish. So I did it on the grill.
With a doobie.
You know my siblings. That's all they do. So that was fun. That was good. That was a good meal. But yeah.
Fun times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's all I got. So yeah. So things that keep us up at night. Who wants to go first?
I can go.
Okay.
I often wonder, so I know last week I was talking about like sleeping and wrinkly sheets and all that crap.
Mhm.
But I find it weird that when we sleep, most people need something covering them. And to kind of tie into that, I guess it's odd that the human body doesn't regulate its temperature very well when it sleeps compared to other mammals.
Mm-hmm.
And we also don't see very well in the dark compared to other mammals
Mm-hmm.
or animals for that matter.
Right.
And it just makes me wonder, like, where did we come from? How did we get here? Either how did we evolve this way or were we planted here from
Yeah.
somewhere else?
What do you think?
I think we're a plant or a genetic mutation. I don't know. An intentional genetic mutation. I'll put it that way. Yeah.
So we were intentionally created to be.
Our DNA was fubbed with,
Okay.
and here we came,
Okay.
and we could do some things better, but other things we did not get.
Yeah. I mean, I read an article by a scientist that took that stance and just did a thought experiment about it. And he came up with the fact that if we did evolve from this planet, we didn't evolve very well because physically it doesn't match.
Right.
Like every single one of us will have back problems,
Right.
which means that we may have come from a planet that doesn't have such strong gravity.
Mm-hmm.
Our joints will wear out. Again, the whole gravity thing. We don't heal on our own from different bacteria and diseases where other mammals do. Like they may get cut and then their body is able to fight it off
Right.
on its own without medical intervention.
And we don't have any like self-defense anything other than our brain. Like we don't have
Right.
nails, we don't have teeth or claws or whatever, and teeth. That,
Right. Only in numbers are
And we don't have our numbers, yeah.
Yeah.
Like we don't have any thick fur to protect us, or scales or shells or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah. So like there is millions of animals, but there's only 20 type of apes. And of those 20, only one has figured out to do what we do.
Yeah.
So it makes us very unique. So, maybe we did come from somewhere else. Maybe we were genetically modified by other beings.
But then don't you wonder, like, if we were intentionally genetically modified, what were the other prototypes? Because we weren't model 1, right? Or maybe we were.
Maybe we were, and that's the issue.
That's the problem. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe that's where unicorns, trigger for my mom.
Unicorns and fairies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
maybe fairies were one like they're too small.
Yeah.
But
the narwhal survived.
The narwhal did survive. Dude, I always thought as a kid when you see him in like cartoons, like the old Christmas cartoons, I always thought it was a mythical creature. Like I didn't think it was real until
my mom still insists they are.
She doesn't think they're real?
No, she firmly she doesn't want to believe it's real because it looks like a unicorn.
Yeah, but
of the ocean.
But like there's evidence.
No, they're at the zoo.
Yeah,
you can go see one for yourself.
Right.
No, they're not real.
Like
she's taking a breeze dance. I could see it, but it's not real. I'm giving you a hard time.
But I didn't see anything.
You didn't see the shellfish? You didn't see the word fish?
Shawl? Did you say shellfish?
Yeah, it's got a little sweater.
It's a shawl.
Shellfish.
A shellfish. It gets cold in the Arctic.
It's a selfish shellfish.
It's a shellfish.
Shawl.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to go next?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why aren't there dinosaur ghosts?
I'm sorry. Enunciate, please.
Why aren't there dinosaur ghosts?
Because they've moved on.
Are we sure about that?
Yeah. Dinosaurs don't have souls.
But there's also animal ghosts, and some people say that animals don't have souls.
But not all animals have souls.
But some people believe they do, and there is animal ghosts out there.
Some people are stupid.
I believe all animals have souls.
2/3 of this podcast is stupid.
How can you say that?
I don't think all animals have souls. I think there are. So the way that I distinguish in my belief, and I could be wrong.
You're always wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I think an animal that is capable of unconditional love has a soul. I think that's where that comes from, is that soul. So
you prove that.
Well, you can see how they take care of their young.
Yeah, but based on how we take care of our young or don't. It's bias.
It's not biased. We take for the most part.
So a turtle doesn't love its kids because it swims a million miles across the ocean.
I'm not saying they don't love their kids. I'm saying they don't have.
I'm going to die on this hill right
now. You will, and that's fine. They don't have the capability of unconditional love.
You don't know that. A tree has unconditional love.
It doesn't.
Yes, it does.
No, it
scientific studies have shown.
No, the scientific studies have not shown they have unconditional love. Yeah. Okay, pull one up.
Well, humans don't have unconditional love.
Yes, wasn't there like a study that
everything.
Someone was able to grow plants by singing to it or something?
That's one of them.
Yeah, so that's unconditional love right there.
No, it's not.
In a forest, a mother tree can take care of its baby trees. It knows how to share nutrients with its baby trees first before giving nutrients to other trees that are not genetically related.
Okay, but that's not unconditional love.
How do you know? Maybe that's how a tree shows love.
Probably not.
I don't know how you can say otherwise.
Well, go on.
Like you're framing it up from a human reference.
Framing from my own perspective. From my own perspective. I wouldn't even call it a human. It's just from my perspective.
I mean, there are some humans who are not capable of unconditional
100%.
love. So do they not have
100%. Maybe. Maybe. I mean, I'm not going to leave that off the table. That is a possibility. I mean, maybe that's the thing. Maybe, these evil people just don't have souls.
Maybe, but maybe to answer your dinosaur question is maybe they're more evolved spiritually that they don't need to stick around this place and they went off to
Neverland,
dinosaur planet B.
Or if they were stuck here, maybe it took them 1 million years, and since they've been dead for 400 million years, they moved on. They were able to unstick themselves.
Or maybe they're at the bottom of the ocean because
they can't escape.
The continents moved up and
or
the oceans
they're
went
just
down.
in our gas tanks right now.
No, those are shellfish.
Shellfish.
I said shellfish.
You said shawl.
I'm going to go back and listen to the tape and prove
Roll
you guys
back
wrong.
the tape.
Yeah, pretty much. Go to the tape. All right.
I feel
thank
like
you.
every time we have this conversation, it keeps me up at night. Because we're always tit for tatting each other.
Always. But that's what makes it fun.
What kept you up?
The thought of, does it really matter where we end up when we die?
I think it depends on the person.
Physically or spiritually? Where you end up, where you die. Sorry.
Like, what do you mean spiritually or
like,
physically?
are you talking going to heaven or hell, or are you talking
Yeah,
like
I wanna be in my
died
bed,
in
I
a
wanna be in the
country?
hospital.
Yeah, like physically, like in the street or in a swamp or in another country.
I think it depends on the person. Because there's some people that want to be right around family and in a comfort space. There's other people that just take my life away. I don't care where I'm at.
So, yes. So you're looking at it from a personal perspective. I'm just talking about generically and generally. Does it matter generally? People want different things for everything. So I'm just talking about in the grand scheme of things. Does it matter where you end up when you die?
I guess I'm still trying to wrap my mind around your question. So I've already deceased. Where do you put my body?
No, like
where you die. Like,
where you
let's
die.
say you die right here, right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
Versus
die
like
right here, right now, and I'll poop on this chair.
dude, that's fine.
versus like going in the hospital
I'm
and dying,
burying
or
you with the chair.
I mean,
Like, does it really matter?
It matters to the person. I don't think it matters. In
that's
the
what
grand
like I
scheme of
can't
things.
get my mind out of that like personal concept. Like I think it depends on the person.
Well, it's because you don't have any more thoughts. I think you ran out of thoughts.
Why do you always gang up on me?
I don't gang up on anybody.
I'll get a
She
squirt
said the
bottle.
exact same thing I said, and you gang up on me.
No,
Get a squirt bottle, and every time you
No,
misbehave
no,
like a
she did
cat.
not.
She just said it depends on the person.
No, she says generally, in grand scheme of things, she said no. You said I can't get out of the way of being a personal thing,
Yeah.
but she was able to say generally no. So she was able to get out of that way. You said you can't.
But besides that fact, we basically said the exact same thing.
No, that's not. Besides one fact, that is the fact that made it different.
You're just making it more complicated.
I mean, do you know the words that come out of your mouth?
Yeah.
No one else does.
Oh,
Frank.
mom and dad are fighting.
Bree. Bree.
You just blew it.
I just blew what?
Yep.
No. So, all right. Well,
What is your opinion on the matter?
I think it kind of does. Yeah. I think it matters where one person dies.
Why? Put more explanation into it.
Because, how can I'm trying to think of a way to, no, I'm just trying to think of a way to verbalize my thought.
I know how I feel.
No, I don't. Because I think it matters. Because I think it lives on to like the kind of life you lived. You know, the choices you made. That you ended up in a certain area and place when you finally leave the mortal coil. You know, so I mean, if I died in prison, I was probably a bad person. You know, if I died old, surrounded by my family, I may have had a lot of love. I may have made some better decisions than others. You know, if I died in an accident, I was just unfortunate. You know, so I think it does matter where you finally die.
On the toilet is where you're probably going to pass away.
Just like Elvis. Me and Elvis, 100%.
I think my great grandpa passed away in the toilet.
Well, you know what? A lot of great men passed away on toilets.
Eat more fiber, guys.
Me just straining.
You need to stop straining. Cause
Just-
yourself a heart attack.
Actually, it'd be an aneurysm.
Whatever.
I'm just saying. Because all that pressure you're pushing.
Yeah, but what if it... Never mind. I'm not
No.
even going to ask the question. No.
Ask it.
Maybe it's a workout. I don't know.
It might be. It might be. You know, just working that sphincter.
Yeah. Get the heart pumping and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, all right. I think we lost a couple listeners there. So what are we talking about today, guys?
Exactly what this conversation feels like right now.
Torture devices in American prisons.
Ooh.
That's what it feels like right now.
It pretty much is.
Would
The
you,
door's locked, the sun's setting, and
Frank's
Frank's
been
got a
farting.
Hey, I left the room to fart.
for like
we
3 minutes straight fart.
It
Yeah,
really
it
was.
was. It felt so good.
It sounded like you should do it yourself.
Yeah, well, you know what? There's only one way to find out.
I don't want to know.
All right. I'll send you guys pictures later.
Ew.
All right. So prison torture devices. In the shadows of the American prison system lies a chilling reality that often goes unnoticed. A collection of torture devices and punitive practices that have sparked outrage and debate. From the infamous solitary confinement units dubbed the Hole to the harrowing restraint chairs, electroshock devices, and chemical agents, these methods paint a grim picture of how society sought to control its most challenging individuals. It's a tale straight out of the dark novel where the lines between justice and cruelty blur and the fight for humanity plays out behind cold bars and concrete walls. These tools, often presented as necessary measures for maintaining order, raise
I was forgotten, and you reached out to me.
As Jesus says, whatever you do for the least of these, you do unto me. Support a child in his name through Compassion International at compassion.com/unto me.
You will be like God.
Human unity with God was severed, and through it all, God's promise remained true.
Follow me, Abram, and I will make you great.
This is the chosen people. Listen to the chosen people at thechosenpeople.com. That's thechosenpeople.com.
on questions about the morality of punishment and rehabilitation. Do they serve as a deterrent, or do they merely perpetuate a cycle of suffering and despair? As prison reform advocates and human rights defenders shine a light on these practices, we are invited to confront the uncomfortable truth. How do we balance the need for safety with the obligation to treat every person with dignity? In this exploration of America's prison torture devices, we will unravel the complex narrative of punishment, power, and the enduring quest for justice, challenging ourselves to imagine a system that prioritizes rehabilitation over retribution. While torture devices are often associated with medieval Europe, various methods were used throughout American history, particularly during the colonial era and the early years of the United States. The following are some of the known torture devices that were used in America's dark past. The Tucker telephone. The first device was the Tucker telephone. This notorious torture device used in some American prisons, notably in the Tucker State Prison Farm in Arkansas during the 1960s. The device was developed as a form of brutal punishment for prisoners who became infamous for the severe pain it inflicted. The Tucker telephone was ingeniously yet horrifically crafted from a modified crank telephone. The phone's electrical generator, usually used to create a current for making calls, was repurposed to administer electroshocks to the human body. The phone's generator was connected with two wires. One wire was attached to the victim's toe and the other to their genitals. A prison guard, often referred to as the telephone operator, real weird.
This is just twisted.
You're right?
He would turn the crank, generating an electric shock.
Ouch.
Like, who the fuck thinks of that?
Fucking fucked up people.
Somebody was drunk one day and he's like, oh, this phone zapped me. I can use this to torture people.
Yeah,
Crank that handle.
pretty much.
Crank it.
Yeah. Do you think that's why, cranking one out is now called that?
God.
The intensity and duration of the shock could be controlled by cranking the handle faster or longer.
That's what she said.
The term long distance call was used to describe particularly severe shocks that were prolonged and intense. The device was used as a form of punishment or to extract confessions from prisoners. The electrical shocks caused excruciating pain and could lead to serious physical and psychological damage. Reports of its use led to widespread condemnation and eventually contributed to investigations into the inhumane treatment of prisoners in the United States. The practice of using the Tucker telephone was eventually halted after public exposure and subsequent prison reforms, but its memory remains as a symbol to the extreme abuse and cruelty inflicted in some parts of the prison system.
I feel like you would try it out just to see.
Like as a kink?
Yeah.
I think they
Put
still
it
have
on
it
your
on
nipples.
display somewhere too. So you can like try to like sneak in there and try it out.
Listen, so I put up with a lot of pain in everyday life. Like I have my shoulder, my back, my knee. Like I don't remember what it's like to not wake up with pain. When it comes to sex or pleasure, as soon as I feel pain, Stanley goes away.
Stuttering Stanley? He turns into stuttering Stanley?
No, it's just like the power drill, Stanley, power drills. That's why I call him Stanley. So yeah, so he goes back to bed. Yeah, he's done for the night.
Yeah.
If there's any pain ever associated with those activities, so I had to stop cranking it out with sandpaper.
Sandpaper.
I mean, it just hurts so good.
Okay, Bruce.
All right, pretty much. All right, another device used was the hitching post. The hitching post was a metal rail or bar, typically waist high, to which prisoners were handcuffed with their hands above shoulder height. Inmates were left standing in this position, sometimes for hours, exposed to the elements, often the searing heat of the southern sun, without access to basic necessities such as food, water, or bathroom facilities. Prisoners were shackled to the post using handcuffs, often so tight that the cuffs cut into their wrists, causing pain and restricting blood flow. The high positioning of the arms placed immense strain on the shoulders and back. Inmates were sometimes left at the hitching post for extended periods, during which they could not sit or move to alleviate the discomfort. The harsh conditions often led to severe dehydration, heat exhaustion, and physical and psychological trauma.
Is this why your back and shoulders hurt?
Maybe.
Did you do a lot of hitching posts?
I plead the fifth. The hitching post was used as a punitive measure to punish inmates for misbehavior or perceived noncompliance, even for minor infractions. It was part of a broader disciplinary system aimed at maintaining strict order and control within the prison environment. The use of the hitching post was widely criticized for being excessively cruel and degrading. Human rights advocates argued that the device violated the Eighth Amendment of the United States Constitution, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. The hitching post gained national attention with the landmark Supreme Court case Hope v. Pelzer in 2002. In this case, Larry Hope, a prisoner in Alabama, sued prison officials for having subjected him to the hitching post twice. On one occasion, he was left shackled to the post for 7 hours in extreme heat, denied water, and taunted by guards.
Like 2002.
Yeah.
Like I thought you were going to say this was an old thing,
like
like
1960s.
like the stocks in medieval Europe.
Yeah. No, I mean, people really think that we have evolved so much from even 80 years ago. We really haven't. You know, we've just stopped reporting on this stuff.
You're right.
Yep.
That's all it is. Out of sight, out of mind. Hope argued that this punishment constituted cruel and unusual treatment. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of Larry Hope, finding that the use of the hitching post was indeed a violation of the Eighth Amendment. The court's decision emphasized that the treatment was so degrading and unnecessary that prison officials should have recognized it as unconstitutional. The Hope v. Pelzer decision marked a significant moment in prison reform and human rights law. The ruling effectively ended the use of the hitching post in Alabama and set a precedent for evaluating the constitutionality of other punitive measures used in correctional facilities. The case brought greater awareness to the conditions and disciplinary practices within the human prison system, spurring calls for more humane treatments of inmates. Despite the ban of the hitching post, the case continues to be cited in discussions about prisoners' rights and the limits of acceptable punishment. It serves as a reminder of the ongoing struggle to ensure that prison practices respect basic human dignity and comply with constitutional standards. With that being said, I'm very curious how that's going to affect the private prison system, because the Constitution only protects your rights from the government, not from private industry.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
So I'm wondering what goes on there now.
They just need to stop privatizing
Yeah.
prisons because it's just a money machine.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Overcrowding, poor conditions, no rehabilitation, torture.
and it goes and it has judges be influenced by monetary
Yeah.
payoffs to have a higher conviction rate
Right.
than They would.
It's a business.
So more people would be put in jail than necessary.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
We're only talking like it changed a lot of laws, but what, 22 years ago? Like,
Right.
come on.
Right.
What have we been doing prior to?
Right.
What are we still doing now that isn't covered under this?
I still think solitary confinement is,
Barbaric.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're social creatures and when people are in there for days,
Yeah.
weeks,
Yep.
You
I
don't
mean-
put a kid in a corner for timeout. Like, I can understand, like,
like a 10-minute timeout,
Yeah.
or I mean,
cool down period, but it doesn't
yeah.
have to be like a dark hole in the floor, but like,
Right.
okay, go to your room.
Right.
What would happen if like schools that have a dark hole like in the floor? Like you go in there now.
You mean they don't?
Ooh,
Well,
it's-
you went to private school, so they were allowed to, right?
I guess so. I did go to private school. The next torture device American prisons used was the waterboard. Waterboarding is a well-known form of torture that simulates the sensation of drowning. It is most commonly associated with its use in interrogations during the War on Terror by intelligence and military agencies. But historically, waterboarding and similar techniques have also been reported in American prisons under certain circumstances. Waterboarding involves restraining a person on a flat surface, often tilted so the head is lower than the feet. A cloth is placed over the person's face, and water is poured continuously over the cloth. This creates the overwhelming sensation of drowning as the victim feels water filling their nose and mouth, even though the cloth prevents actual water inhalation. The inability to breathe and the sensation of suffocation can cause intense fear and panic. The effects of waterboarding are severe and long-lasting. Immediate physical effects can include extreme discomfort, gagging, vomiting, and damage to the lungs or other parts of the respiratory system. Repeated exposure can cause lasting harm, such as damage to the brain due to oxygen deprivation. The technique is also psychologically devastating, often causing severe anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and long-term trauma. Survivors of waterboarding have reported flashbacks, nightmares, and a constant fear of drowning. Waterboarding as a method of coercion or punishment has not been as widely documented in civilian American prisons as it has been in military or intelligence contexts. However, allegations have surfaced of similar water-based torture techniques being used in some correctional facilities in earlier decades, often as extrajudicial forms of punishment or to exert control over prisoners. The use of waterboarding became a major topic of debate in the early 2000s, when reports revealed that the CIA had used the technique during interrogations at facilities like Guantanamo Bay and secret black sites around the world. This was part of the so-called enhanced interrogation techniques employed against terrorism suspects. Human rights organizations and international bodies, including the United Nations, classifying waterboarding as a form of torture. It violates several international treaties, such as the United Nations Convention Against Torture. The U.S. government has faced significant criticism over the use of waterboarding. In 2009, President Barack Obama officially banned the use of waterboarding and other enhanced interrogation techniques, declaring them illegal. However, debates about the ethics and legality of waterboarding have persisted in American political and legal discussions. While waterboarding specifically is more commonly linked with intelligence agencies rather than standard prison practices, the broader use of water-based torture or similar mistreatment methods has sometimes occurred in prison settings. In these cases, prisoners have reported being subjected to humiliating and painful water-related punishments, such as being doused with high-pressure hoses or forcibly submerged in water as part of the disciplinary measures. These actions have also raised concerns about human rights abuses. Reports of past mistreatment and the legacy of techniques like waterboarding have prompted ongoing efforts to improve the oversight and regulation of interrogation and punishment practices in the U.S. justice system. The use of torture, both domestically and abroad, remains a significant issue for human rights advocates. Public awareness of the effects of waterboarding and similar techniques has increased partly due to depictions in media and investigative journalism. Efforts to educate people about the reality of torture aim to prevent future use and promote the humane treatment of all individuals, including prisoners. Like, here's the thing. I don't care what kind of criminal you are. Whatever the justice system sentenced you to, that's what you deserve. This, you don't deserve. And anybody that is for waterboarding, I'll just use that as the example, I think should be waterboarded first and then see if their opinions changed or not. I think if you want to do something like that, you should go through it first and see what it feels like. And if you think it's still okay, you know what? That's fine.
So basically, like, if I'm getting what you're saying, it's like they're using this as they're putting the law in their own hands instead of letting the law do what they're supposed to be doing.
Correct. Well, also just punishing people in general. So, I mean, if you're in jail and you fucking throw your crap at a guard or whatever, I mean, that happens all the time.
Or you somehow piss them off by just looking at them.
Yeah. I mean, whatever the case is, I mean, we're still human beings, right? I mean, like, I get that if somebody ever killed somebody I cared about, I would want to murder them on the spot and torture them. I get it. But that's the feeling you have when you lose somebody but just in general, like, I don't know. I guess when emotions come into play, it's different, but.
Yeah, but the enforcers of prison systems are supposed to be neutral.
Correct.
They're not a victim. They're not a criminal.
Right.
Allegedly. They're supposed to just maintain safety and order. And I understand that job's not easy, but like there's so many folks with ego complex and I just don't know how people think of these things.
Right.
Like, is someone just like, I'm going to try this and see if this works?
Right. Well, it's probably the same people that make those like torture movies. It's like, how do they even like think of this stuff?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so my dad was an officer for a while. And so I 100% appreciate police officers and security people and all that. But when you take the law into your own hands and you feel, that you're always in danger, I get that. I understand why you would, but it's your choice to do that job. And if you have these concerns, maybe it's not the right occupation for you. When you're acting, when you act out of fear instead of training, maybe it's just not right for you,
Well, then you also wonder, maybe some are just acting out of training and that's just the direction that their leadership says,
right.
Okay, go waterboard this person.
Right. So which speaks to an even bigger problem.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just don't understand, when people are like, well, I was just doing my job. Well, were you? Or did you really, I don't know. I digress. Anyway, so American prison also used dog kennels as a form of torture device. The use of dog kennels as a form of prisoner confinement in American correctional facilities represents one of the more extreme and dehumanizing methods of punishment reported. While not widely practiced across the country, there have been documented instances where inmates were confined in kennel-like structures under appalling conditions. The kennels were typically small cage-like enclosures that resembled those used for housing large dogs. These spaces were designed to severely restrict the inmate's ability to move, stand, or even sit comfortably. Inmates confined to these kennels were exposed to harsh environmental conditions such as extreme heat, cold, and rain. The spaces provided little to no protection from the elements, and prisoners were sometimes left in these enclosures for extended periods. The intention behind using dog kennels was often to degrade, humiliate, and break the will of inmates, serving as a form of extreme punishment. The psychological and physical effects of such confinement were devastating as it stripped the inmates of basic human dignity. The use of dog kennels as a form of punishment has been most notably reported at the infamous Parchman Farm in Mississippi. The facility, known for its harsh and abusive treatment of inmates, has a long history of using severe punitive measures. Accounts of prisoners and advocates have described how inmates were locked in kennel-like cages as punishment. While Parchman Farm is one of the most documented cases, there have been reports and allegations of similar practices occurring in other prisons, especially in the early to mid-20th century. These practices were often part of broader patterns of abuse and neglect within the correctional system. Being confined in a cramped kennel-like structure for long periods can lead to severe physical discomfort, pain, and injury. Inmates could develop muscle cramps, sores, and difficulty breathing, particularly if left exposed to extreme weather conditions. The psychological impact of being treated like an animal and confined to a cage can be profound. Inmates subjected to this form of punishment often experience intense humiliation, I can never say that word, stress, anxiety, and long-term trauma. Lack of proper sanitation, exposure to the elements, and restricted movement significantly increase the risk of health complications. Prisoners might suffer from dehydration, hypothermia, or heat stroke, depending on the weather conditions. The use of dog kennels as a form of punishment has been condemned as a violation of basic human rights and dignity. Human rights organizations and prisoner advocacy groups have highlighted these practices as examples of the inhumane treatment that some prisoners have faced. The exposure of such abusive practices has occasionally led to lawsuits, investigations, and calls for reform. In some cases, public outrage over the treatment of inmates has prompted changes in prison policies, implementation of stricter oversight to prevent further abuse. The use of dog kennels as a form of confinement has largely been eradicated in modern American prisons, but the legacy of such practices remains a stark reminder of the need for continued oversight and advocacy for prisoners' rights. Today, there are stricter regulations governing how inmates can be confined and punished, although concerns about abuse and mistreatment still persist. Despite improvements, some facilities continue to face criticism for poor living conditions, neglect, and punitive measures that are viewed as excessively harsh or degrading. Advocates emphasize the importance of humane treatment and the protection of inmates' rights even in the most challenging circumstances. Stun belts.
Well, I was just going to, before you jump in, I was just going to, so that made me think of two things do you think that like when they were first met with maybe some, hey, you can't use dog kennels, was maybe the argument of, oh, we're just protecting them from themselves or them from other people. Kind of like they did the Utica cribs and stuff like that when people in mental hospitals and.
Yeah, they probably tried using it as an excuse, but.
Yeah, I can definitely see that would be a defense of theirs. But I mean, the reason why prisoners don't get rehabilitated anymore is because of how they're treated. There's not that many rehabilitation programs in prisons. I mean, I get if someone's, locked away for life, right? They have no possibility of patrol, or parole, and they're just locked away for life. There should be specific prisons for those kinds of sentences, But when it comes to like someone who, theft or whatever, more of a white collar crime, and they're put in these severe prisons with these severe people where everyone's treated like animals, there's no shock as to why these people don't get rehabilitated and come out even worse than they were going in. We're not doing anybody any favors. We're not doing society a favor. We're not doing them a favor. Their family members, they're not, even ourselves, because they're going to get released and they're going to be just as worse. Mm-hmm. So, stun belts were introduced in the early 1990s and were primarily used in the United States. They were designed to be worn around the waist and could be remotely activated by law enforcement or correctional officers to deliver an electric shock. Jesus. The intended purpose was to control unruly or potentially dangerous individuals, particularly in prison settings and during court appearances. While the use of stun belts has declined in recent years, they have not been entirely abolished. Some jurisdictions still use them, but their application is now more tightly regulated and often limited to specific circumstances. There have been numerous controversies surrounding the use of stun belts, with critics arguing that they constitute cruel and unusual punishment and could lead to serious injuries. Human rights organizations have called for a ban on their use, highlighting concerns about their potential for abuse and the risk of accidental activation. As a result of these concerns and increased public awareness, many jurisdictions have implemented stricter guidelines for the use of stun belts. These guidelines often require that their use be authorized by a supervisor, documented, and subject to review. Additionally, there are efforts to develop alternative methods of restraint that are less harmful and more humane. Thankfully, those are all in the past, or at least that we know of. Unfortunately, there are some torture devices that are still being used today. That's crazy.
I mean, we put our dogs in cages and we put shock collars on our dogs. Maybe they don't like it either.
Shock collar is actually static shock, not electric shock, though.
Still, they don't like it.
There's some dogs that like it, actually, unfortunately.
Dogs got kinks?
So, no,
I guess so.
dogs like kennels because it comes from like the ancestry, like the dens, because they're small. So a lot of dogs like that. And there's some dogs that will go right through those static shocks and don't even feel it. They don't care.
I know.
Yeah.
But still.
Well, even like a pincher collar doesn't hurt them. You know that, right?
Unless it's been used the wrong way.
Oh, if it's used wrong. But if it's used correctly, it doesn't hurt them. Like I had a dog trainer put one around his thigh, and he looks at me and goes, pull. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure you know how strong I am. I'm pretty strong. And I'm like, all right. So I gave it like a good tug, and he didn't even flinch. He goes, it doesn't hurt. It's more of an attention grabber, you know?
Well, yeah, mama dog would usually nip at the, not like to hurt, but
Right.
it's,
Yeah. Now choke collars, those are a different thing. Those are inhumane for even dogs.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Yeah, people buy them at adult toy stores.
They do. They do.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm keep going. You guys
No, I was
have a lot
talking
of
a different
knowledge.
topic.
Have a lot of knowledge about this adult bookstore and buying.
seen it. on TV.
I only know the
Yeah.
animal side of things,
Uh,
not the adult human
I
side
mean, I
of
know
things.
they say dogs like because of the den, but just, I don't know. Just seems.
Like when my dog comes over here, he goes straight to their kennel. He loves their kennel here.
Yeah, we don't have it up anymore.
Yeah, but when he did,
Yeah, when we did, even Sheldon, that was his home.
it's like they're
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah, the only time I ever used it was when we first got Rizzo as a puppy. He was 5 months old, so I didn't want him to piss and shit everywhere, you know. So, and then we only used it with him for just a few months. It didn't take very long to potty train him. But Sheldon, that was his home.
I remember when
He
you
won-
first got Sheldon with him, though, with it, like you would put him in there and he would escape from there because
Yeah.
he hated being
Well,
locked in.
He was our first dog, and so we didn't know how he would act. So the first day that Missy left to go to Target, it was gone maybe 30 minutes, and she's like, "All right, go in there," and locks him. And she comes out, and he's out.
Houdini.
Yeah, he's
Pretty
out.
much.
He had a cloth type collar that was wrapped around one of the things. So we're like, "Fuck."
Yeah, you're not supposed to have a collar on a dog in a cage. That's
Again,
really
our
dangerous.
first dog,
Yeah.
we didn't know that. And then the next time he got put in there when we left, he was able to fuss with the wall enough to where the clips came undone and it collapsed, and he was out when we
Little
came
Jack
home.
in the box.
Dude,
He's
so
an escape artist.
when
Well, he would hop your fence and stuff.
Oh yeah, when he had his first knee surgery, and we decided to keep him for the first 2 weeks at the vet, and I would visit him every night. And the reason why is because that was the most important time. So with having Rizzo, I'm like, there's no way we can keep him still.
Mm-hmm.
So I told the vet, I go, listen, he will escape from your kennel. And they're like, no one that. I'm like, I'm telling you, he's going to. And they're like, no. After the third day, they came in the next morning, and he was in the runway. He was able to finagle with the lock, get it unclipped, and he was just in the door, laying down, going back and forth all night long. And they're like, "You were right." I
The
go, "I
motion
know."
sensors didn't go off.
Yeah, I was like, "Jesus!" I'm like, "My dog is an escape artist."
Yep.
So, all right, one torture device that is still being used is the restraint chair. This chair is a device used in various correctional facilities across the United States to immobilize inmates, particularly those who are deemed violent, uncontrollable, or a danger to themselves or others. While intended for safety and control, the use of restraint chairs has raised significant ethical, legal, and health concerns due to the potential for abuse and the serious consequences of prolonged confinement in such devices. The restraint chair is a sturdy chair equipped with straps and restraints that secure the inmate's arms, legs, and torso. The chair is typically made of metal or heavy-duty plastic, designed to prevent escape and ensure the inmate remains in a fixed position. Straps are used to secure the inmate's wrists, ankles, and chest. In some cases, a strap is placed over the face or head to prevent movement. The design can vary, but the primary purpose is to limit the inmate's ability to move freely. The primary intention behind using a restraint chair is to control inmates who pose an immediate threat to themselves or staff, particularly during violent outbursts or self-harm incidents. It is often employed in response to aggressive behavior or attempts at escape. In some instances, prison staff may argue that using a restraint chair is necessary to protect the inmate from injury during a confrontation or to prevent self-harm. Prolonged use of the restraint chair can lead to serious physical health problems. Inmates may suffer from muscle atrophy, nerve damage, pressure sores, and circulation issues, particularly if restrained for extended periods without breaks. The psychological impact of being restrained in such a manner can be severe. Inmates may experience increased anxiety, panic, and trauma. Some individuals may develop post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of all their experiences in a restraint chair. There have been numerous reports of restraint chairs being used excessively or inappropriately. In some cases, inmates have been restrained for hours or days without sufficient cause, raising concerns about the abuse of power by correctional staff.
Days?
I know, that's ridiculous.
Crazy.
Like, you're telling me that he's a danger to himself and others for days?
And that's your solution.
Right. Reports of staff using restraint chairs as punishment rather than a safety measure have also surfaced. The use of restraint chairs can raise legal questions related to the Eighth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. Courts have ruled in cases involving excessive use of force and mistreatment in prisons, often highlighting the need for proper guidelines and oversight concerning the use of restraint devices. Various human rights organizations have called for a reevaluation of the practices surrounding the use of restraint chairs. They advocate for policies that prioritize the humane treatment of inmates and provide alternative methods for managing behavior.
I was forgotten, and you reached out to me.
As Jesus says, whatever you do for the least of these, you do unto me. Support a child in his name through Compassion International at compassion.com/unto me.
You will be like God.
Human unity with God was severed, and through it all, God's promise remained true.
Follow me, Abram, and I will make you great.
This is the chosen people. Listen to the chosen people at thechosenpeople.com. That's thechosenpeople.com.
Without resorting to extreme measures. Many correctional facilities are beginning to adopt training programs aimed at teaching staff nonviolent de-escalation techniques to manage inmates' behavior. By focusing on communication and conflict resolution, facilities can potentially reduce the need for physical restraints. Providing better mental health care and support for inmates can help address underlying issues that may lead to aggressive behavior. Improved access to counseling and psychiatric services can mitigate the risk of violent incidences and reduce reliance on restraint measures. While the use of restraint chairs is still permitted in many facilities, there is increasing scrutiny and push for regulations that limit their use. Some jurisdictions have implemented strict guidelines regarding when and how restraint chairs can be used, emphasizing the need for regular assessments and monitoring of inmates while restrained. There is a growing awareness of the potential harms associated with restraint chairs. Advocacy for prisoners' rights and humane treatment continues to influence discussions around prison reform, leading to calls for more humane alternatives and oversight of correctional practices. Another current torture device are chemical agents. The use of chemical agents in American prisons is a contentious practice that involves deploying substances designed to incapacitate or control inmates, often in situations where they are perceived as violent or uncontrollable. Common chemical agents used include pepper spray and tear gas, which can immediate and severe effects on individuals. I cannot talk all of a sudden.
It's okay.
One chemical agent is the pepper spray. It is made from capsaicin. Thank you. Capsaicin, the active component in chili peppers. Pepper spray is designed to cause intense irritation to the eyes, skin, and respiratory system. Its effects include temporary blindness, difficulty breathing, and severe pain. The other chemical agent is tear gas. Tear gas is a chemical compound that irritates the eyes, causing tears, pain, and temporary blindness. It can also induce coughing and difficulty breathing, leading to panic and disorientation. Chemical agents are often used to manage riots or disturbances in prison environments. They can disperse groups of inmates or prevent violence during confrontations between inmates and staff. Correctional officers may use chemical agents to defend themselves against aggressive inmates. It is often seen as a non-lethal alternative to physical force or weapons. The use of chemical agents can pose significant health risks, especially for individuals with pre-existing respiratory conditions such as asthma or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Exposure can lead to severe respiratory distress, permanent lung damage, or even death in extreme cases. Exposure to chemical agents can also have psychological effects, including increased anxiety, panic attacks, and post-traumatic stress disorder.
You just sounded like a drug commercial. A little bit. Side effects may include.
Well, I am available if they want me to
Jeez.
do any reading for commercials.
I want to know, like, how is this not considered lethal?
Because the percentage of the cases that it does become lethal is low enough to where...
It's not categorized.
Exactly.
Yeah, this sucks.
Yeah. The experience of being exposed to such agents can be traumatic, particularly if it is used excessively or without justification. There have been numerous reports of chemical agents being misused or used excessively in prison settings. For instance, inmates may be sprayed with pepper spray as punishment rather than as a last resort to control violence. This raises significant concerns about the potential for abuse by correctional staff. The use of chemical agents in prisons can lead to legal challenges under the Eighth Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. Courts have examined cases where the use of chemical agents appeared to be excessive or disproportionate to the threat posed by the inmate. Human rights organizations have called for stricter regulations on the use of chemical agents in prisons, arguing that their deployment can violate the rights and dignity of inmates. They emphasize the need for accountability and oversight to prevent abuse. Many correctional facilities have established policies governing the use of chemical agents, outlining when and how they can be deployed. These policies are intended to ensure that chemical agents are used only in appropriate situations and that staff receive training on their proper use. Some advocates suggest alternatives to using chemical agents, such as improved training for correctional officers in conflict resolution and de-escalation techniques. By focusing on non-violent methods of managing inmate behavior, facilities can reduce the need for chemical intervention. There have been several high-profile instances where the use of chemical agents in prisons has come under scrutiny. Reports of excessive use during routine cell extractions or for punishment non-compliant behavior have drawn public attention and calls for reform. Instances where inmates were subjected to chemical agents during protests or hunger strikes have sparked significant backlash. Advocacy groups have highlighted these instances as examples of inhumane treatment, leading to increased demands for transparency and reform in prison practices.
They use these for hunger strikes?
Yeah.
Like, what purpose is that?
No idea. That mind baffles me too.
Thank you for using my terms.
I'm just making fun of you.
It makes me happy. I don't care if you're making fun of me. It just makes me happy.
All right. Like, I get it for like huge prison riots. 100%. I have no problems using it there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But just because someone's not complying.
All right.
I mean, how about we use our words? What we tell little kids, use your words.
Words are hard.
For you, they are.
Yep.
4-point restraints is another current form of torture devices. This is a method used in some American prisons and psychiatric facilities to immobilize inmates or patients deemed a danger to themselves or others. This type of restraint is designed to limit movement by securing an individual's limbs, typically the wrists and ankles, to a fixed structure, such as a bed or a specialized restraint chair. While intended for safety and control, and use of 4-point restraints has raised serious concerns regarding the potential for abuse, physical harm, and psychological trauma. 4-point restraints typically consist of straps or cuffs that are attached to the wrists and ankles of the individual. These straps are then connected to a sturdy structure to prevent the person from moving their limbs freely. Inmates are secured in a manner that restricts their movement, often lying flat on their back or in a seated position. The restraints are meant to be tight enough to prevent escape, but not so tight that they cause injury. The primary purpose of a 4-point restraint is to control violent or disruptive behavior in inmates or patients. They are often used during violent instances when staff feel that physical intervention is necessary to protect the individual or others. In some cases, 4-point restraints are used to prevent self-harm, particularly in individuals experiencing severe mental health crisis. The goal is to keep the person from injuring themselves or staff during these episodes. The use of 4-point restraints can lead to serious physical issues, including bruising, nerve damage, and circulation problems. Extended periods in restraints can cause muscle atrophy and joint pain, particularly if the person is not monitored and released regularly. The psychological impact of being restrained can be profound. Inmates may experience feelings of humiliation, anxiety, and panic. Prolonged use can lead to long-term trauma and mental health issues, including post-traumatic stress disorder. There have been numerous reports of 4-point restraints being used excessively or as a form of punishment rather than a legitimate safety measure. Such practices raise concerns about the potential for abuse by correctional staff. The use of 4-point restraints has been challenged in court as a potential violation of the Eighth Amendment. Cases have examined whether the use of such restraints constitutes excessive force or inhumane treatment. Advocacy groups have highlighted the dangers of 4-point restraints, calling for stricter regulations and oversight to prevent abuse. They argue that alternatives should be explored and the staff should be trained in de-escalation techniques to minimize the need for physical restraints. Many correctional facilities have established policies governing the use of 4-point restraints. These policies are intended to ensure that restraints are used only when absolutely necessary and they are applied in a manner that minimizes harm. In facilities where 4-point restraints are used, there are often guidelines regarding the duration of use and the need for regular monitoring of the individual to ensure the safety and well-being. However, enforcement of these guidelines can vary significantly between institutions. By focusing on communication and conflict resolution, facilities can potentially reduce reliance on physical restraints. Providing better mental health care and support can address underlying issues that may lead to aggressive behavior. Improved access to psychiatric services and counseling can mitigate the need for physical restraints. Isn't it weird that it's always coming back to mental health?
Well, that's what I was going to chime in earlier is, I know that we said they could be profound, but I mean, if you picture yourself in a situation like that, it's not just, we're going to leave you here by yourself. Or maybe it is, but usually there's probably some sort of drug or something, sedative or something you're very vulnerable. You're laying prone. Like that's, I don't know. It's just, it's triggering for me to envision somebody having to survive that.
Yeah. With everything else going on in our world today, the biggest thing is mental health. The one thing that we lack the most in as a society is the ability for a normal person to get mental health treatment. And not just, immediate, but prolonged treatment.
Yeah. And you might be, I'm just kind of thinking on that is, sure, let's just say you're putting somebody in a situation like this to prevent them from physical harm, but at what cost on the mental harm?
Right.
When you said that we don't have great rehabilitation, we don't have great access, we don't have great awareness. A lot of people are only just recently or now starting to talk about mental health, but for the last thousands of years, it was sweep it under the rug, put your lipstick on, and smile pretty for the camera kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. I've always found it weird that mental health isn't focused on more. I think I've mentioned this before, but somebody smokes for 30 years and they get lung cancer, and it's like, oh, poor guy got lung cancer. It's like, well, he kind of did it to himself. That's coming from an ex-smoker, right? But when someone has something wrong with their brain, the one organ we know the least amount, how it works, how it functions, how to fix it. And usually it's by no doing of ourselves. It's usually an exterior component that affects us. And we don't have the tools to fix it. but we are blamed for it not working correctly and not being, up to par or quote unquote normal. That doesn't make sense to me.
Your brain's broke, right?
Oh, 100%.
It's your fault.
Dude, our brains are assholes.
They are.
It has all the components to make us feel great all the time, and it doesn't.
Yep.
It's going to fuck with you instead.
Yep.
That's from, I forget what comedian, like a little bit about that. It made me laugh. I'm like, it's so fucking true. So the next torture device are electroshock devices. Electroshock devices, often referred to as electroshock weapons or stun guns, are tools used in some American prisons and law enforcement settings to
incapacitate.
I'm telling you, I'm having weird words today. Individuals by delivering an electric shock. These devices are intended to control violent or aggressive behavior, but their use has raised significant concerns regarding safety, effectiveness, and ethical implications. Common types of electric shock devices include taser guns, stun guns, and handheld electroshock weapons. These devices deliver a high voltage electrical shock that temporarily disables muscle control. Tasers typically shoot 2 darts that are connected to the device by wires, delivering an electric current over a distance. Stun guns, on the other hand, require direct contact to deliver a shock. The primary purpose of electroshock devices is to incapacitate individuals who pose an immediate threat to themselves or others. They are often used in situations where officers believe physical restraint would be dangerous or insufficient. Advocates of electroshock devices argue that they provide non-lethal option for law enforcement and prison personnel to control aggressive behavior, reducing the risk of serious injury or death compared to traditional weapons. The use of electroshock devices can pose serious health risks, particularly for individuals with pre-existing medical conditions such as a heart problem. There have been cases where the use of tasers has resulted in cardiac arrest or other serious injuries. The experience of being shocked can also lead to significant psychological effects. Victims may experience trauma, anxiety, and fear, particularly if they have prior experiences of violence or abuse. There have been reports of electroshock devices being used excessively or inappropriately, including cases where individuals were shocked for noncompliance or in situations that did not warrant such force. This raises concerns about potential abuse by correctional staff and law enforcement. The use of these devices has been challenged in courts and a potential violation of the Eighth Amendment. Legal cases have examined whether the deployment of such devices constitute excessive force. Various human rights organizations have called for stricter regulations on the use of electroshock devices in prisons and law enforcement. They argue the potential for abuse and the risk of individuals' health necessitate for a reevaluation for their use. Many correctional facilities have established guidelines regarding the use of electroshock devices, outlining when and how they can be deployed. Policies are intended to ensure that devices are used only when necessary and in accordance with established protocols. Staff in facilities that utilize electroshock devices often undergo training on their proper use, including how to assess situations where their use may be warranted. However, the quality and extent of training can vary between institutions. Improving access to mental health services for inmates can help address underlying issues that may lead to aggressive behavior. Providing appropriate care can mitigate the risk of violence and reduce reliance on electroshock devices. Lastly, a torture...
The Mac Daddy.
The Mac Daddy. Lastly, a torture device...
The Mac Daddy?
Thank you.
I was like, oh, you're waiting on me.
Has been used in both in past and present is called the hole or solitary confinement. This is a form of imprisonment in which an inmate is isolated from the general prison population. This practice has been used in various American prisons and is often employed as a disciplinary measure or a means of controlling violent or disruptive behavior. While solitary confinement can serve certain purposes within the correctional system, it raises significant ethical, psychological, and health concerns. Inmates placed in solitary confinement are typically confined to a small cell for 23 hours a day, with minimal human interaction and limited access to outside activities, education, or rehabilitation programs. Cells used for solitary confinement often lack basic amenities. They may be sparsely furnished, and the lighting can be harsh or inadequate. Inmates are frequently denied access to personal items such as books or writing materials, and are typically monitored through a small window or camera. Solitary confinement is often used as a punishment for violations of prison rules such as assault, escape attempts, or drug possession. It is seen as a way to maintain order within the facility. In some cases, solitary confinement is employed to protect inmates or staff from individuals who are deemed dangerous or unpredictable. This can include those with violent histories or serious mental health issues. Prolonged solitary confinement has been linked to severe psychological harm. Studies have shown that isolation can lead to anxiety, depression, hallucination, and other mental health issues. The lack of social interaction and sensory stimulation can exacerbate these conditions. Inmates in solitary confinement often face health risks due to inadequate medical care and the stress of isolation. Conditions such as high blood pressure, cardiovascular issues, and weight loss can develop as a result of prolonged confinement. Research suggests that inmates who spend significant time in solitary confinement may struggle to reintegrate into the general population upon release. The experience can exacerbate existing mental health issues and make it more challenging for individuals to adapt to life outside of prison. The use of solitary confinement has raised legal questions related to the Eighth Amendment. Courts have examined cases where prolonged isolation is deemed excessively punitive or detrimental to an inmate's health. Various human rights organizations advocate against the use of solitary confinement, particularly for vulnerable populations such as juveniles, individuals with mental health conditions, and those serving long sentences. They argue that isolation can constitute torture and call for reform to eliminate or significantly reduce its use. Some jurisdictions have begun to reevaluate the use of solitary confinement and are implementing policies aimed at reducing its prevalence. This includes establishing guidelines for the appropriate duration and conditions of confinement. This is a growing emphasis on finding alternatives to solitary confinement. Many facilities are exploring behavior management programs, mediation, and restorative justice approaches that aim to address issues without resorting to isolation. The practice of solitary confinement has come under increasing scrutiny from the public, advocacy groups, and lawmakers. Documentaries, books, and news reports have highlighted the negative effects of isolation on inmates, leading to calls for reform. Some states have passed legislation aiming at limiting the use of solitary confinement, particularly for juveniles and individuals with mental health issues. These reforms aim to promote more humane treatment of inmates and reduce reliance on isolation as a disciplinary measure.
So I've wondered how I would react. This is maybe some thoughts that keep me up at night. So I've wondered how I would respond to solitary confinement.
We can test that.
You have a hole in the basement?
Yeah.
I feel like it was solitary confinement is similar to during COVID when everyone was stuck in their house. I mean, being stuck in an office, working from home, in a tiny little room in my house for long periods of time, started going crazy because after that it was still same spot. Couldn't really escape it.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some
similar.
similarities. Yeah.
I feel like I thrived.
Well, then I think we know how you'll react. You'll come out
maybe I've already lost it mentally, but yeah, I found so many ways to just, I don't know, as long as I could take a nap, I could entertain myself with the conversations I have inside my head.
This is true. I've seen it happen.
No, right now.
Yeah, I still went to work, so
So it's some people have the college experience, others had the COVID experience, and you did have the COVID experience.
Yeah, I had.
You had open highways.
It was so great.
You could probably make it to work in 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, it was so awesome.
The first 5 months I was out of the office, and then they made me come back in the office.
Yeah, they gave me a choice to stay home or go into work, and I knew Missy was working from home, so I'm yeah, no, I'm coming into work. I can't stay with her for 24 hours. I would murder her or myself.
Yeah, I mean, I know the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
When JT worked from home, It wasn't bad, but he was so loud. He took all of his conference calls on speaker, and they would just reverberate through the whole house.
Yeah, that was Missy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's people in my office right now that do that.
Yeah.
Wow, in the office?
Yes.
Ew. Come on.
It's like, do you guys know what
Bummer.
headphones are for?
I would smack him. So, as we draw the curtains on this unsettling exploration of American prison torture devices, it becomes clear that the battle between control and compassion is far from over. These instruments of punishing, be it in the isolation of solitary confinement, the jarring shock of electroshock devices, or the cold embrace of restraint chairs, serve as stark reminders of the lengths society will go to impose order. Yet, amidst the darkness, a flicker of hope emerges as advocates and reformers push back against these antiquated practices, advocating for a system that prioritizes humanity over cruelty.
What documentary was there? There was a documentary. It was about like the prison systems, but it was like European ones and like different countries. And like the ones like I remember in Europe, like they're very like nice and organized. They have like this whole like rehab thing for them.
Mm-hmm.
People that come in during murder come out like better than they were.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got us, and there's way worse than us too. Like I know in some like in like other like I would say it's like South America. Like I think, but
South America and Asian.
Siberia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Asia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also, I mean, that's also why in Europe, most police officers don't even carry a gun. You know, like they don't need to. You know, they're not as violent because they, you know, in my opinion, they have these actual reform programs and rehabilitate people back to a healthy state.
So why are we so broken? Like, what are we doing to A, create the criminal, B, we obviously know what they're not doing to help the criminal, and it doesn't even have to be criminal. Like, why are we all
because we stupid Americans.
It's because we, in my opinion, and this could even be considered a conspiracy, we as a society and even as a government want workers. We don't want free-thinking individuals. So, for example, take school. What is the worst thing you can do in school? The two worst things is be late and question authority.
Mm-hmm.
Which, as an employee, what are the two things? Is be late and question authority. So we're interested in creating workers. And in order to do that, we have to pit each other against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to compete, have the lower middle class compete against each other. The upper class controls everything, and they take the middle class and trick them into blaming the lower class into why there's so many issues like violence and crime.
What do you mean?
So the propaganda that's distributed says, well, you could pick yourself up by your own bootstraps. Everyone else does. No.
Yeah, just gaslighting.
Right.
Yep.
So the reason there's crime, the reason why prices are going up is because of the lower class and how they live. You know, they're the ones that are perpetuating the issues that we see. We're the good guys. We're trying to help, which, if you open your eyes, is not the case. You know, it makes no sense why there is middle class people advocating to have billionaires not be taxed more. Just my opinion. You know, I don't know. Go ahead.
I agree with the worker part.
Yeah.
You go to school, you're not taught anything about life skills. You're taught how to do a job. I mean, that's how public schools became. The factories went into schools and said, okay, you're teaching people things that, you know, aren't relevant for what we do at our widget factory or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Teach them X, Y, and Z. And then now I have a steady stream of employees coming in and retiring out and coming in and retiring out.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, I don't know. Why are other countries not having to do, like, I don't know.
I think
why are there people smart enough to be like, we don't want that.
Yeah.
We want to like
yeah.
ride bikes, clean city. You know, we're going to ride bikes to work. And
yeah, I don't know.
unless it was a form of just general control because the United States is bigger than basically all of Europe, you know, geographically wise. So how do you, I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay.
I want to zap I don't know.
Zap me.
Yes.
I'll like it. All right. Bree, any closing words?
No, not really. I mean, I said what I said earlier, so about the differences of the different prisons and
No more thoughts?
no. Just that we're crazy and I don't want to go to prison and have to experience any of this.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to go to prison, let's be honest, right? I mean, that is a fear that keeps us following the law.
I'm breaking the law.
Break? No, yeah. So, all right. Well,
Alrighty.
that's it for this episode. My name's Frank.
My name is Bree Bree.
And this is Lynette.
And you've been listening to Fringe
Beyond Limits.
I was unskilled, and you trained me. I was forgotten, and you reached out to me.
I was fatherless, and you nurtured me.
I was broken, and you mended me.
As Jesus says, whatever you do for the least of these, you do unto me. Support a child in his name through Compassion International at compassion.com/unto me.
You will be like God.
Human unity with God was severed, and through it all, God's promise remained true.
Follow me, Abram, and I will make you great.
This is the chosen people. Listen to the chosen people at thechosenpeople.com. That's thechosenpeople.com.
If your day sounds like
we need the report ASAP.
You deserve Modelo. If you've persevered through, you deserve this rich golden lager with a crisp but refreshing taste. Or if you overcame,
2 more reps, 2 more.
You deserve this ice cold reward. Modelo, the Remarkable Fighter. Drink responsibly. Beer imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois.
Hey everybody, I'm Trevor Sikkema, host of the PFF NFL show, here to tell you what you can find on all of our shows throughout the week. On Mondays, we have the Grade Release Show, where myself and Dalton Washman break down every single game that you just saw in the NFL. On Tuesdays, we have the Quarterback Breakdown with Seth Galina. On Wednesdays, we've got the Rookie Review with John Ledyard and the preview for the upcoming week in the NFL. So make sure you are subscribed to the PFF NFL show wherever you get your podcasts.